Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
The Lakers drafted LeBron's kid. James must be a proud papa, but is this the best thing for Bronny? Also, the Timberwolves took their one big offseason swing in the draft, and the Memphis Grizzlies may have gotten the steal of the draft. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply.
I'm Peter Bukowski, starting your day with the can't-miss stories and biggest debates in sports. You're Locked On Sports Today.
Searching all major sports. Found.
Let's start with the biggest story.
The LA Lakers took an All-American in the 2024 NBA draft. They also took LeBron James' son. Guess which one we're going to talk most about over the next couple months? I think I have an idea. Andy Kamenetsky from Locked On Lakers. He gets to program his own show. So I'm not going to speak for you, Andy. You and your brother, you have to do what you have to do over there on Locked On Lakers. I actually do want to start with Dalton Knecht because he was someone who was going in the top 10 in a lot of these mock drafts. That doesn't always mean really anything when it comes to the actual draft, right? But what did you think of the Lakers being able to take someone who a lot of people thought was a top 10 kind of player in this draft?
Look, after every draft, whoever is the GM or running basketball ops for a team talks about who they selected in the first round, saying they had this guy way higher and they couldn't believe that this guy was available for them at whatever number. Like, we hear this about everyone. They had him 10 spots higher. In the case, though, of Dalton Knecht, I actually believe this is true because every single mock I saw out there had Knecht as a lottery pick, some like mid-lottery. Yeah. To put it in perspective, in reading up on some of these guys, just, full disclosure, don't follow college basketball that closely. I was focusing on the guys that seemed most commonly either drafted by the Lakers in these mocks or in the general vicinity. I didn't bother learning anything about Knecht because it did not seem like there was a prayer he'd end up there. So I think the Lakers are very excited, and I get why. This seems like a real potential boon for them.
And even if he never plays for them and becomes a trade chip for them, there's value in that too.
Sure.
That's part of the calculation here for sure. We can't not talk about Bronny James, who was one of the big names coming into this draft. He was the most bet player to go number one overall. He slides. He didn't slide, guys. He was always going to go in the second round. all the way to the Lakers at 55. And LeBron and Bronny become the first father-son duo to share a team. What I think is an objectively cool story. What do you make of it?
I think that part of it is very cool, particularly too, and I honestly don't know the answer to this, how Bronny feels about it. I think we all have a very good idea of how LeBron feels about it, and I'm happy for him because this has to be an amazing feeling for him as a father. We don't have as strong a sense about how Bronny feels about it, and I don't say that to mean that I think he hates it or anything, but I do think the Lakers need to be very, very hyper aware of the idea of treating Bronny as his own person. And for example, Rob Pelinka, in the press conference he did after the second round ended, he began his opening remarks talking about the potential historical significance of this, acknowledging LeBron is still a potential free agent as a player option. We don't even know for sure that he is going to re-sign with the team. But, were this to take place, were he to stay with the Lakers, you have this incredible significance. Then started talking about Bronny James as a player and a person. To me, the obvious thing is you reverse that. You begin by talking about Bronny James as a player and a person. Then I would wait for somebody to ask about the historical significance, then wax poetic. And I think it matters because I think it lends more credibility to drafting Bronny James. It lends more credibility to Bronny, this situation that he's entering. He is already set up for a fair amount of cynicism that is unavoidable. And some of this really has nothing to do with Bronny. But I do feel like if the Lakers want to do right by Bronny, they need to be doing everything they can to protect against that. And I think that really has to begin with a hyper awareness of treat Bronny as his own entity, as opposed to, for lack of a better way of putting it, a novelty act.
And I love that you brought up what is best for, not even what is best. How does he feel about it? How does the kid feel about it? You and I are both dads. We understand what it would be like in that moment, but we're also both sons. Like, we understand what that might be a different understanding in that moment. What do you think is the most likely path forward for Bronny James, understanding that making the actual Lakers roster at this point, at least, is probably a long shot?
Oh, no, I disagree. I think he's going to be on the 15-man roster. It's already, I think he's going to get signed. Rich Paul has already said he's not doing two-way contracts. Like, he's made that very clear. I think he'll log some G League time, and that's great. That's very
Sorry, that's
common.
what I meant, that he would play more in the G League than yeah, sorry.
Oh, yeah, I think he absolutely will get some G League time. I think it'll do him very good. And, we had Mike Garcia on our show a few days ago, and he's somebody that is, his specialty is evaluating prospects. And in particular, he's also very Laker centric in this. He's a Laker fan. He pays close attention to the Lakers, and he's local. So he had seen Bronny play since high school. He actually had Bronny as a late first round talent. Like, he actually thinks that a lot of people are missing some of what Bronny does well. I think in a lot of ways because it is so difficult to evaluate him not through the prism of LeBron. Yeah. And again, I think it gets back to that general challenge of trying to see Bronny as his own entity. But as far as his potential path, it seems I've seen DeAnthony Melton come up as a potential comp for him, like a bit of an undersized point guard, but very, very good defender, somebody who plays smart, can see the floor well. He is, as one would expect, being LeBron's son, very, very athletic. Yeah. He is a very, very strong guy. I imagine the basketball IQ has been passed down. And, his season at USC, we don't know exactly what to make of it because we don't know what it would have looked like without the cardiac situation that thankfully seems to be behind him. But this is a note for myself as well. Everybody has to try their best to view Bronny through a prism that doesn't involve LeBron, because I think that does everybody, whether you're talking about the Lakers, whether you're talking about Bronny himself. I think that sets him up best for success, sets up everybody best for success.
Stay up to date all year on the LA Lakers by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Lakers on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Thanks for making Locked On Sports Today your first listen. Coming up, the Timberwolves may have won the draft with a trade. Before we get to that, we look at a few impact picks in the second round. Game Time makes getting to the ballpark even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, and their best price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. They're obsessed with finding ways to help you save money on tickets. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the start of the event. Have you heard how many times I've said the word tickets? They're obsessed with them. Find exclusive flash deals and sponsored deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. There, I said it again. And the Game Time guarantee means you'll always get the best price on tickets. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the free app and new users can get $20 off their first purchase with code Locked On. Terms apply. That's code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase with Game Time. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, the lowest price guaranteed. If you're catching this episode after hearing your favorite Locked On show, make sure to subscribe to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. The Pelicans traded into the second round to take Antonio Reeves.
This is a dude that I was pretty high on, not as someone you would take in the first round or even the second round. And before the second day of the draft started, I tweeted out, keep an eye on him as an undrafted guy the Pelicans might want to sign. Well, I guess they didn't think he was going to be there as an undrafted guy and traded into the first round to go and get him. I do think this is ultimately a good pick. This is a guy that does it at all three levels. You know, the knock on him probably going into the draft is he's older. This is a multi-year college basketball player, 5-year player, 2 with Kentucky in the SEC, Illinois State before that. But he put up numbers last season, over 20 points per game, shot from three, 44.7% on 5.7 attempts. And the dude has some of the best touch, I think, in this draft. The reason he fell down is because he's not a great defender, even though he has good size at 6'8", but a bit of a slim frame. Or sorry, not 6'8", 6'4". Who, if he was 6'8", we'd be talking entirely differently about him.
The Pacers added a solid player in Johnny Furphy after making a trade with the Spurs.
Johnny Furphy from Kansas is a player perfectly suited for the NBA. I'm Derek Johnson from Locked On Jayhawks. He's a 6'8" wing who at 19 years old was a soaring late riser, went from nearly being in a future high school recruiting class to reclassifying to showing flashes off the bench to then starting in January to then from January through February going off with 12 points per game on 38% from three. Now it was a mixed bag over his final 13 games, just 28% from three there. And when Kansas became more relied on him with a more injured team, you saw some deficiencies in the half court, creating his own shots and consistency, as well as on the defensive end, though there was always a high level of want to and high effort level on that end. But overall, the shooting and transition play make you think he's going to be a good fit for the NBA. For more on Furphy and all things Kansas Jayhawks, follow and subscribe to Locked On Jayhawks on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.
The Knicks traded for lefty point guard Tyler Kolek. They have another lefty point guard there, right?
Tyler Kolek, Marquette is a bulldog and a winner who rises to the occasion time and again, and someone I want on any team. I'm Isaac Shade from Locked On College Basketball. Tyler Kolek is a 6'3", 195-pound, 23-year-old lefty point guard who was a second-team consensus All-American following up his Big East Player of the Year award the year before. While there's a lot that Kolek does well, what shines the most is his distribution. He led the nation with 7.7 assists per game this season, while, oh, by the way, scoring 15.3 points, grabbing 4.9 rebounds, and knocking down 38.8% of his threes. I am a bit concerned about his ability to defend at the next level in his size and athleticism, but you can't deny what's on tape, and I would trust him and his savvy ability to lead a second unit. Give me Andrew Nembhard and what he just did for the Pacers as a player comp.
And the Jazz added to their front court with Kyle Filipowski.
Duke big man Kyle Filipowski benefited from playing a second season with the Blue Devils, but now he's ready to begin his NBA career. I am Alex Dono from Locked On ACC. Filipowski is a proven commodity as a 7-footer who can flex his game out to the perimeter. He enjoyed an All-American season in 2024 as a sophomore, started all 72 games over his 2 years with Duke. Filipowski improved his overall shooting percentages and three-point percentages in his second year. In 2024, he shot 34.8% from three, 50.5% overall, and he hauled in over 8 rebounds per game. Kyle Filipowski can help an NBA team immediately. The question is, will he develop into a star or just a steady contributor? A common player comp for him is Kelly Olynyk. For more on Kyle Filipowski and all things Duke, follow and subscribe to Locked On ACC on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.
Heading into the 2024 NBA draft, I'm not sure many of us predicted we would be talking about the Minnesota Timberwolves coming out of night one, which, remember, it's a 2-night thing for reasons that escape most everyone, I think. But the Timberwolves, fresh off their Western Conference Finals appearance, they trade up a future first that is in 2078, I believe, and then a pick swap. No, it's in 2031 for Rob Dillingham. And Ben Beacon is here from Locked On Wolves to help us make sense of all of this. And Ben, I guess there's not much to make sense of. They needed some more scoring, and they think they found it.
Yeah, coming into the offseason, it was playmaking, like somebody who could create their own shot and also playmake for others. And it was really a bit more of that off the bench. You got plenty of it in the starting lineup with Anthony Edwards and Karl Anthony Towns and some good ancillary pieces there. But when those guys weren't, you always had to have one of them on the floor for the most part, other than Naz Reid at times can create his own offense. But they needed somebody that could do it from the backcourt, somebody that they could pair with Anthony Edwards. They ran into some problems in the playoffs. They had a pretty middle of the road offense last year. As dominant as the defense was, the offense was middle of the pack in the NBA in the regular season. And so when they faced good set defenses, when the pace slowed down in the playoffs, they struggled at times to score. Unless Anthony Edwards got on a heater, which certainly happened enough to get them to the conference finals, and Cat had some really good games in there too, they need some more options from the backcourt. And so this was, for a team that's already over the second apron salary cap wise, it's not a cheap way to do it because you still got to pay an eighth pick a lot of guaranteed money, but they don't have any options in free agency other than the mid-level exception and some vet minimum. So this was a creative way for Minnesota to get essentially a fixed, cost certainty, I guess, if you will, for the next several years from a player who's got some pretty high offensive upside.
Upside is a nice way of saying we're not going to see it right now. So from that standpoint, what do you expect? I'm understanding we have a long way to go. Summer League, where we get our first glimpse of these guys in a professional setting. But what is your expectations of Dillingham with the Wolves? How much can he contribute right now?
Yeah, and I don't want to sell him short because I think that the upside is legit all-star level. I think immediately he can score at the NBA level I think he could volume score. I mean, I heard somebody on a national podcast say they wouldn't be shocked if he had a 40-point game this year before we knew what team he was going to go to, and he may not get those minutes unless Mike Conley misses extended time, which hopefully doesn't happen. But he's going to be the backup point guard. And I know he effectively played off the ball at times and wasn't necessarily always the point guard running the show at Kentucky, but he's going to run the show off the bench for Minnesota this year, and he's going to have the opportunity to kind of be a spark plug. They tried to shake Milton at that spot last year. The year before it was Jalen Noel. Neither of those guys worked out. Neither's with the team anymore. And Rob Dillingham is going to get the opportunity to play make in the half court, to score for himself. And I think he can, push. It all depends on opportunity, but he's going to absolutely get every opportunity to be Mike Conley's backup. And Conley's got a player option for the year after this one, and he's going to be 39 at that point. There's a chance he just retires. If nothing else, we're only 3 years away from, or really only 2 years away from having the conversation of, is he now the starting point guard? So I think from day one, he's going to be a really good catch and shoot 3-point shooter. He's almost 50% last year at Kentucky on catch and shoot threes. Wow. On 88 attempts. He was 48% on 88 attempts. So he can play off the ball too. And I do think he'll immediately provide needed scoring punch off the bench. The question is, can he play make for others enough? And defense is the biggest question mark. He's only 6'1" with a 6'3" wingspan. He showed flashes defensively, but will he hold up at that size in the NBA?
Yeah, only 160 some pounds as well. They also on day two got Illinois guard Terrence Shannon, who I believe is almost 24 years old, a 6'7" wing who can defend. Is this it for Minnesota? You mentioned all of the financial issues that they have. Do you make this move? Do you move up for someone like Dillingham? Because as you stated, financially, they're just pretty hamstrung as to what else they can do here.
Yeah, they have the mid-level exception, which is probably going to be between $5 and $6 million based on being a second apron team. So they'll surely try and bring back Kyle Anderson, slow-mo. He made more than twice that last year. So it could be tricky, although he said publicly in exit interviews he wanted to be back in Minnesota. And they really like him. Chris Finch loves Kyle Anderson, and he would, that they're still missing somebody else with size that can play make a little bit off the bench. Shannon is more of a transition terror, a 3-and-D type guy with maybe a bit more juice, hopefully an upside than your average 3-and-D guy. But yeah, I think it's going to be trying to bring back slow-mo. They'll surely add a veteran point guard on a minimum deal. It could be bringing back Jordan McLaughlin or Monte Morris. But other than the mid-level, it's only vet minimum salaries, and they've got to fill, I believe, 4 roster spots total, not including two-way deals. So we'll see. But I think it's going to be kind of some of those veteran type names that you usually fill out a roster with. The only real piece they have is that mid-level exception. And if they don't get Kyle Anderson, they're going to start looking down that list of guys who you might be able to get for $5 or $6 million that are could legitimately, you could plug in as a 9th or 10th guy on a playoff team.
Stay up to date all year on the Minnesota Timberwolves by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Wolves on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Coming up, the Grizzlies may have gotten the steal of the draft in the second round. Second-round picks are not to be forgotten. Nikola Jokic and Jalen Brunson can attest. Will there be any stars from this year's second round? Locked On NBA host Wes Goldberg and Adam Mares believe the Grizzlies may have found him.
You know, there are some players that I like. If you were to ask me for candidates, I would start here, and it's going to sound crazy. When you're trying to pick somebody to be this, not just a good player and stick, but oh my God, they're a star, you have to go with somebody with like a mysterious background. You know, Jalen Wells would be that guy to me. He went 39th. He goes, I believe, to the Memphis Grizzlies.
Yep.
I'm sorry. Was he? Yeah, 39th. He is a guy that was playing at Sonoma State for a couple of years, was not highly recruited out of college or any of this, ended up playing 1 year at Washington State and had a breakout year. Great shooter, so he can score. Like, to be a star, you're going to have to be a scorer. Great shooter, like really, really good shooter. Almost reminds me of Cam Johnson a little bit in the release and in the height, body type, all of those things. So he has one elite skill. And anytime there's a guy who like 3 years ago was a 5'10" JV player and all of a sudden now he's in the NBA, you go, hey, that's a steep curve. Maybe that continues.
I like that he's 6'7". I like that he's a late bloomer. I like that he's an improving outside shooter. He shot 42% on his 3-pointers last year. When you combine size and shooting with a little bit of that ball handling, you know, I think that there's something there, and Memphis has done really well in the second round, right? Or in the draft in general, like they usually go for these guys who test out well in their analytic models and all these things, and they tend to draft well.
This was not the best draft in terms of class year over year. In fact, next year is considered a much more talented class. But think back to other not so talented classes of years past. Let's think of the 2013 draft. Anthony Bennett goes number 1. Everyone goes, whoa, what happened here? Victor Oladipo goes 2. But you get a guy named Giannis Antetokounmpo. He goes 15th. CJ McCollum goes 10th. Rudy Gobert goes 27th. And in the second round, look, nothing to write home about. Alan Crabb in the second round. You have Nate Walters, who kicked around the league. You've got Mike Muscala, who's still kicking around the league. James Ennis. These are real NBA players. You can find real NBA players even in a mediocre, or in this case, maybe bad draft. Some teams have been fine just throwing away second-round picks. Second-round picks can have a lot of value. Non-lottery picks can have a lot of value. You got to get a little bit lucky. And finally, the NFL is going to have to pay me some money. And maybe you, maybe your friends too. A jury in U.S. District Court ordered the NFL to pay more than $4.7 billion in damages Thursday after ruling the league violated antitrust laws in distributing out-of-market Sunday afternoon games on a premium subscription service. The lawsuit covered 2.4 million residential subscribers and 48,000 businesses in the United States who paid for the package of out-of-market games from 2011 through 2022 on DirecTV. The lawsuit claimed the league broke antitrust laws by selling its package of Sunday games at an inflated price. True. The subscribers also say the league restricted competition by offering Sunday ticket only on a satellite provider. Also true. All right, Roger, I'll give you my Venmo. You just send the money right on over. Sounds good. Thank you. If you're catching this episode after hearing your favorite Locked On show, make sure to subscribe to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. Also, if you're a new subscriber to Locked On Sports Today, we're here with the biggest stories in sports every day. Coming up on the next Locked On Sports Today, which first half performance has been the most surprising in Major League Baseball? So at least until tomorrow, stay Locked On Sports Today.
Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
For more episodes of Locked On Sports Today, go to our video on demand. Click on sports at the top of your screen. There, you'll find past episodes of Locked On Sports Today, plus other Locked On shows on demand.